No problem.
Well, we've just been talking. I spoke a couple of weeks ago now, and you're, I suppose, in part of this group where senior leaders, heads of, directors, who at the moment are probably struggling a little bit within the recruitment market. It is a bit slower at the senior end, and we discussed not only your strengths and how you have a lot of transferable skills, but also some of the challenges that we're maybe facing within recruitment and the use of AI software and ATS systems, and perhaps how you're getting rejected before you get through to a decision maker who you could potentially be amazing for.
Yeah.
And with your background, coming from City Fibre, establishing and heading up the Centre of Excellence, portfolio delivery, senior initiative delivery manager, with Sicilian as well, strategic senior PM program manager, working with FTSE 100 companies, £100 million budgets, and then various other, telecoms and communications businesses. You'd have thought you'd be walking straight into a role, wouldn't you, in a normal time?
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, with your CV, you sent me your CV and it looks phenomenal. You'd have thought in a usual market, you would be, people would be banging your door down. So obviously you're on your hunt for your next challenge. I know you've interviewed this week and it does look like the market's picking up, which is good news. But what would you say the main challenges that you've faced have been?
So I think for me, it has been, like you say, a stagnant market. The number of applications for each role is it's an increased number. I would say between 100 and 300 people per role. So it's making sure that, one, you get in early to be one of those front runners. And the other thing is also, like you mentioned, your CV. So I've had the challenges I've had with a CV has been getting it through those systems. So if it's one word out, and I spend a lot of time making sure that my CV reads effectively, the main bones of it stays the same. But where I've had that experience and they've specifically calling that out, I've highlighted it. And then and on paper, I'm an absolute match for the role, whereas it goes through these systems, and there's not all of them. I've seen an increase in some industries and some roles that I've been applying for which haven't been those systems, and I'm getting better responses from them. But where you see the ATS systems, I'm getting rejected, and I'm getting rejected for no specific reason other than there's words missing out of my CV, which for me is really, for example, London hybrid, because I don't live in London, I'm rejected. And I've had conversation with recruiters. I contact them and I have conversations. It's like, and the conversation goes that you're not in London. And I tried to say to them, but it says hybrid. My previous role at Sicilian was London, but I worked from home and in London for Sicilian. I spent a couple of days a week, every other week in London. With City Fibre, I spent a good couple of days a week at least in Milton Keynes or in other areas of the country. I'm willing to travel and it's doable, and I've always worked in an hybrid way, even before COVID. But that still doesn't translate because the system's rejected me. And the other thing, and I think we touched on this before, which I haven't got a degree, but I'm quite a mature lady, shall we say. I'm not going to reveal my age. But I'm a mature lady. I know I don't look it. But I've got a significant amount of experience. I've got years and years of experience of hands-on delivery and transformation, which I can bring to a business, an organisation, that a piece of paper, because I haven't got that piece of paper, I'm being rejected. Some of the roles say desirable, but other roles are absolute essential. And it's for the same role as those desirable roles. And I can't get past that recruiter because the hiring manager or whoever has decided that they need that certificate for me to be able to progress into the next stage and to even have a conversation with them, which in this market, I get they're trying to get the best caliber of people, but one piece of paper does not necessarily mean that's that person. Other people have got those transferable skills. And that's the other thing that I think we touched on before is the transferable skills. People are pigeonholed into sector I've got a broad brush approach where I've worked for quite a number of consultancies, where I've worked within private, public sector, FTSE 100 companies. I've worked from everything from NHS, Education Ministry of Justice, central local government, into big insurance houses, financial institutions, solicitors. So I've got a broad brush approach and I can transfer those skills, but getting hiring managers to see that is a real struggle.
Yeah, the degree, especially when you've got professional certifications as well, you've got your Prince 2, Agiles, PMPs, they're focused on what you do, the transformation, the project management, program management. So it's a tricky one. I mean, I think nowadays I think there are fewer people going to university because of the costs. I mean, I seem to read that on the news, but I don't always believe what you see on the news. But it looks like more people are going into apprenticeships because of the huge costs involved. So, and when it would have been, 10 years plus ago when you got your degree, how relevant is that to right now? Surely the professional certifications would be.
We're talking 20 years plus, but no, it's not relevant. It's not relevant at all because I've got that 20 years worth of experience, the same experience, or probably more experience than somebody that did the degree at some points. But I'm rejected solely on the basis of that. I have for professional qualifications. I've got my Prince 2, I've got management of portfolio, Lean Six Sigma. I've got all of those qualifications. I've studied and I've passed those exams, so I have that proven ability to and also my CV and my experience as well. So it is what it is. It is a hard market right now. It is. I am seeing green shoots, like you mentioned. I've had a couple of interviews this week. I've got another one next week. So, and I am having conversations. Definitely this week is more conversations. Today's the 5th of April, new financial year. I'm really hopeful that we're seeing some movement. What I'm hearing a lot on the market is that businesses that grew drastically during the COVID years have grown out of control, and that's why we're seeing a very much slowdown in the market in terms of a lot of businesses are consolidating and transformation, not necessarily system transformation, but certainly looking at people transformation and streamlining. And that's why I'm looking for my next role, because that's what's happened at my previous employer. They've streamlined, and that's brought me into the market. And that, from what I can see, is that's where a lot of companies are going. I'm hopeful, like I say, new financial year, we'll see an increase in the ask for this level. To be quite honest, I thought when I got made redundant that I would walk into a contract quite quickly. I've contracted previously. I have no problem contracting. The contract market is tight as well, and they're being very specific on skill set for project management. Like tech wise, so some of that I have and some of it I don't have, and there's no point applying for the ones that you don't have, because honestly they're just not interested. Again, pigeonholing, no transferable skills. Because for me as a project manager, I've delivered multiple programs simultaneously, delivering very different techs on each program to different customers that I've had to adapt not only my style with the customer but also understand that technology as well. So I've got those skills, but again, trying to get that across in this market is really hard.
Yeah, I mean, I got like a transformation director role on recently, but it needed a very, very specific system, and they needed to have delivered that system. So, I mean, we're definitely in an employers market. There are some phenomenal people out there, and fewer jobs, and the ones that are hiring have got the pick of the bunch. But one of the things I think we mentioned before we started recording was that if a hiring manager is looking for 100% or 120% of the job description, what are they offering that candidate? Where's the growth? Where's the challenge? How are you going to get them to stay once it becomes an employees market again? Because the only thing you'd be able to do is offer them more money, and then there's a lot of other challenges that come within the wider team. Why are they getting X, Y, Z? So yeah, there needs to be probably a bit of realization, but also salaries did go up massively during COVID, didn't they? Is it just a leveling out? Is it just rebalancing the seesaw again? I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. Salary wise, there is a definite. There doesn't seem to be a baseline. Some of the roles that I've seen, in my opinion, underpaid. Not even with the salary rises in COVID. Some of them are pushing the luck, I think, for the talent they're going to get for that money. And then others are inflated. There doesn't seem to be a middle of the road at the moment that I can see.
Yeah, it's just a strange time, and with elections and all sorts, we won't get into it. But
yeah, everything impacts the market, but I'm hopeful, like I say, green shoots. We'll see.
Well, on our first call, then we also discussed a lot about your career. You had some quite funny anecdotes, but one thing that came up was how a lot of your kind of fundamental beliefs behind successful project delivery and transformation were all underpinned by four philosophies, really: communication, collaboration, flexibility, and adaptability. And those four things come up on nearly all of the calls that I have with senior leaders. So the best place to start is the communication, I guess, and how that ties in with your leadership style. And just seeing if you could share a moment where your communication skills were crucial in either a challenging project turnaround or perhaps where you had to adapt your style, with different groups of stakeholders and teams.
I think communication is key for me when delivering projects and transformation and change. It's key to have a good communication strategy in place when you're delivering transformation. I think it's one of the biggest failures of projects and delivery is where we don't communicate effectively. People don't like change, they don't like transformation, whether that's a project, whether it's a transformation program. People are averse to the word change and transformation. They go to jelly because they think it's impacting them. And in some cases it is, but if you communicate effectively, then it helps deliver that message. It normalizes change, it normalizes delivery. So communication to me is key. I'm big on communication with my team, communication with my stakeholders, certainly from a client-facing perspective. One of my biggest challenges when I worked for Sicilian was being brought into a failing project that I won't say it'd been missold, but it hadn't been the right level of project management. Probably hadn't been sold on that, and it was a global company, so it was delivery in America, very different time zones to us. It wasn't being managed by a project manager, it was being managed by a coordinator who was just aligning resource to jobs over there ad hoc when actually it needed a wraparound. One, the resource wasn't suitable for the job. That hadn't been investigated, and there was no communication to the customer. It was just literally there's nothing. There was no meetings in place. The customer brought in a new top tier, and when they came in, they quickly realised this wasn't viable for them, and they threatened to pull the business. There was also because it hadn't had that wraparound from a senior PM level, the account manager had taken on a lot of the ownership, but he wasn't really equipped with the skill set to deliver projects. He was equipped to sell them, but not necessarily deliver them. So he struggled with that, but he took accountability for everything and tried to take everything on himself. So I had to step into that, and part of the communication for me was understanding the pain points from the customer side.
Yeah.
Understanding what I needed to do to make them feel wanted, because they were literally on the point of pulling out. It was a two-step process, really. I had to listen to them. I had to put an initial wraparound. So we put some steps in place. We put the governance in place. We put meetings in place. So I was having literally daily meetings. We had daily stand-ups internally to talk through. I quickly realised the resource we were using weren't fit for purpose. They were sending network engineers to do MS Teams full big install for equipment for Teams rooms and in a big new head office. It was just not fit for purpose. Yeah. They were YouTubing how to install a system. So that quickly got stopped. So part of the communication was for me to say to them, we're stopping this. We're not going to go on right now. We're going to stop. We're going to re-baseline, and we're going to look at what we need to do.
Yeah.
Fortunately, their build had been pushed out, so I had time to do that. But I think it comes with confidence to be able to say we're stopping this and be able to have that conversation, be able to communicate that effectively, not only to the customers, but also internally, because they want to drive the project internally. But there's a point you have to say, no, this isn't working.
Reputation as well, and the repeat business.
Reputationally, we were on the in the weeds. And as part of that, I had to have a conversation with the sales director to say, look, the account manager's, whilst he's doing a good job, he's trying too hard, but he's also not gelling particularly very well with this new team. They've not seen the best side of him. It's not working. We had a disagreement on that. We then had a conversation with the customer, or a meeting with the customer, where that became very apparent very quickly that needed to change. We had another discussion and we changed the account manager. So it was communicating to the customer and also to the team as well, to say, look, we need to change this. We need to rebaseline. We need to change the team. We did change the team. We brought in external company to do some of the work for us, absolute specialised company. We interviewed them. We brought them in. We got the head office up and running. We then went on to win further money with them and further contracts with them, 25 million.
Which you wouldn't have gone without having those difficult conversations.
We would have lost the contract, honestly. Yeah. Reputationally and from a business perspective, we would have lost the contract, and that's recognised in the business. But that was down to the communication. They hadn't had it before. It was understanding the pain points, and it's been empathetic and working into my other point, collaboratively and flexible and adaptable, and it all sort of fits into the same thing, really. That's where my 4 fundamentals come from. I recognise, and I think in our industry, you have to recognise you've got to be flexible and you've got to be adaptable, and there's nothing wrong with actually stopping something and say this isn't working. Whereas some people may shy away from that, but as industry leaders, we have to be able to go, do you know what? No, let's stop this. Let's pause. Let's take a breath. Let's look at what's working and what do we need to change to make it work better.
I mean, I think if you've got the information you need, whether it's positive or negative, if you're not going to make a delivery timescale, a milestone, you're miles off, but you're keeping those blinkers on and you're not letting people know, it gets worse as it goes on, doesn't it? Call it out early and then get it fixed as quickly as possible. Absolutely. Lesson learned, process in place, governance.
And the customer was happy, and ultimately it wasn't an easy road. They had their own way of working, so we had to adapt our style of working. At the time, I was working on 3 big programs of work, each very different customers. One of them public sector, were very manana, very waterfall, step by step. We've got to do it like this, and their own timeline. Had the American company who were had lost trust in us, and we were trying to build that trust in them, and they had specific ways of how they wanted to run the governance, how they wanted the documentation, how they wanted to review the documentation. So we had to put those processes in place as well. And I was running another program of works with an external company, doing some discovery and rewriting their project plan. So at the time, it was managing all of that on different, but adapting my communication style accordingly, because everybody expects a different kind of communication style. So it's having a comm strategy that aligns with your customer. For internal, it's slightly different, but it isn't in terms of it's obviously not customer facing, but you have to align your comm strategy to your audience. For me, at City Fibre, we did that really effectively. I had a really good comms lead that supported with that, and with some of the initiatives, we had a big stringent comm strategy in place where we did workshops, we did road shows, we did podcasts, we did blogs. With other initiatives, it was just a case of we'd send out a newsletter and an email, this is coming. But it was literally each initiative had its own comm strategy aligned to it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I was thinking about was when you're having these difficult conversations, you are calling things out, but then you've got to keep that collaboration. I mean, we're talking about the collaboration with the end client, but internally as well. How do you foster a culture where people feel comfortable to call something out, to communicate that it isn't going right without feeling like you know, they're going to have the sword of Damocles just hanging over their head.
Yeah. I like to lead from example. I'm very, very transparent. I always have been, and I stand by this. And I don't know that I can say this on here, but own your shizzle. It's a play on the words, if you see where I'm going.
Yeah.
But I very much like own it. If you've done something wrong, own up to it. If you've got an idea, own it, but justify it. So if you want to say, come to, you know, like high justification, have your data, have your reasoning behind it as to what you want to do, and absolutely vocalize it, because this, from a business perspective, whether it's an internal, whether you're delivering for a business into a client, there's nothing worse than just keep, which is what happened at Sicilian with that particular customer, because the coordinator didn't feel it could challenge it. It just went on and on and on. And the same with the account manager, really, because he was quite new to the business. He probably didn't feel he could challenge it and say, I don't think I'm getting the right professional services support. And I think it's having the confidence, but I think your leadership team should lead from example.
Yeah, they need to
and
recognise
be open and honest, and make people feel that they can come to you with that as well. And I like to think that that's how I come across with my team. I'm very much like an open book myself. You know, and if my team want to come and speak to me about something, I'm absolutely an open door. I'm still speaking to them now, even though I'm not in post. They're going through their own challenges currently. You know, this week I feel like I've done team one-to-ones because I've been speaking to quite a few of them this week. But that's because I'm very much like, I'm happy to give advice. I'm happy. It's funny, the interview I had this morning, we were talking about this and an approach and my management style. And I would say, I trust my team. If you have to have a high performing team, you've got to give them the trust to deliver. And I think that if you give them that trust and that openness and honestness, right? I won't need to micromanage. It makes my life easier. You know, and we can have those two-way conversations and we can be collaborative. And it's the same internally as well when you're working with other teams. Be honest and respectful, but you know, be able to have those open and honest conversations when something's not working, or like I had with Craig, with the sales director, it wasn't working. We needed to look at that change in account manager because it wasn't working, but I had the justification for it.
And it's the adaptability, isn't it, then? Being able to recognise that each account's going to be different, each sector's going to be different. And one of the things that came up on our first chat was how you got the name The Fixer, because it sounds like a gangster, but I was laughing. So
I quite like it.
But was that, where did you get that from, going into failing projects, turning them round? So can you tell me a little bit more about that? You know, how did you get the nickname The Fixer?
So the one that I've just talked about was probably the initial one where I brought in my contract. But yeah, generally I have an ability, I would say, to go in and get projects that are failing where customers aren't particularly very happy or internal teams aren't very happy, is going in and having those conversations and understanding and making the customer or the internal team feel that they're being heard, and sitting down and I've got a real background in customer service. I don't know if I've told you before, but I was a holiday rep for quite a few years, a long time ago. Did you know that? Yeah, I was a holiday rep. And people think that that's party. And look, I did a bit of that. I'm not going to lie, I'm always going to put my hands up and say I did a lot of that. But a lot of it was customer service, and it's looking after customers. And I did a lot of different elements of it. So I looked after old people, I did hospital repping, I did hotel repping. And a lot of my skill set comes from that, because it's dealing with very different people in very strange situations and making that situation better.
Yeah, I can imagine. As a holiday rep, you'd have seen it all.
So I've been a fixer for a long time, see? So I've made people's situations better for a long time. So I think a lot of it comes from that, the customer service side of it. And a lot of that is what I put into what I deliver. And I think that's where I have the empathy of understanding people's frustrations and pain points, and I can also look at that bigger picture. So sometimes I find people get into the weeds, and you know, we all do that in our life, don't we? We get into the weeds of it, we can't see the bigger picture. But one of the things that I do, and I think and why I'm called the fixer, is I can see that bigger picture, and I can see where things aren't working and where we need to streamline or we need to change the direction of what we're doing. But I can also communicate effectively and have that empathy and understanding and give that flexible approach.
And what advice would you then give to the leaders who are looking to enhance either their adaptability or flexibility, especially within either rapidly changing industries or environments, projects?
So don't be scared of change. Change is normal. Normalise your change. Any change. And don't be scared to recognise when something is not working. And I think leaders, as leaders, we have to be able to get to say, like for example, at City Fibre, our roadmap, we set a roadmap for 12 months, and in June, the direction of the business was very different to what it was in January, and we very quickly pivoted. Pivot was a big word for us last year, where we recognised some of the initiatives that had been important to us in those first 6 months were now no longer important, and had to be sort of benched almost. But we also recognised that there were initiatives that were going to be important, so we had two very quick initiatives that we had to turn around in a quick space of time, that were business driven from the revised strategy, revised objectives. And as a team, and not just my team, there were 4 of us on the SLT, the SMEs and their team, they picked up very quickly, and we worked really collaboratively together. But that's because we recognised when something wasn't working, we communicated, we understood the business direction, and we worked together to get that in place, really. So it's all about the collaboration, communication, and being able to say stop, really.
And so then, oh, sorry, I cut you off there.
No, I'm just saying it's having that confidence, really, to say
within the team.
Yeah.
And so then, reflecting on your time at City Fibre and establishing that centre of excellence, and I suppose having that strategic approach, you mentioned governance, on a couple of the other calls, and how having effective governance can really help. But can you give us any examples of where you've implemented effective strategic governance models for that enterprise level programme delivery?
Yeah, I mean, at City Fibre, we implemented our centre of excellence was in the network build team, so we streamlined the governance offering. So my experience with a lot of businesses, and I've done this in a few of the places that I've worked and in customers, is that the project delivery teams don't necessarily have that streamlined governance, and they're all working off different documentation or versions of a documentation. So one of the things I've done a number of times is look at that documentation and streamline it. And then at City Fibre, one of the things that we did, I worked with one of the development team from our continuous improvement team, and we created a Kanban reporting function. So what we did is we streamlined the paper version, and we got used to using that as a team. And then once we got used to using that, then we developed the Kanban version of that. And what that meant was it was a centralised function that anybody could access. That's the word. I couldn't think of it then. Could access. It was one point of truth, one centralised location, and it also helped to streamline the reporting function as well. So other teams cross-functionally could access that without having to access our SharePoint. And then we developed several layers of reporting. So from our weekly reporting to, we had a weekly initiative meeting that we reported on, portfolio monthly report, and then to exec level as well. So we worked on pulling different bits of information, but also the benefit realisation piece as well, so we could track the benefits and the progression of the projects. So it's supported with that, and it give us much more flexibility in terms of how we reported on things as well.
And it's user buy-in, isn't it? If it's an easy system to use, more people are going to adopt it, more people are going to use it, they're going to update it. And then, as you said, the visibility for people to be able to access it across the business just means that if someone in another department or one of the senior execs wants a report on XYZ, it's all easy to get, isn't it?
Yeah. And we were just one function, but it worked for us. You know, we didn't have that project software. We were looking at that as a business, but at that point, so it was a quick fix for me. We did something similar at Redcentric with Power BI. We had a team pulling a Power BI system together. We did again the manual. We brought together some manual reporting. I was part of that streamlining. You can see a theme. I've used the same theme across the board. You know, implementing the health checks to make sure. So we still did the health checks to make sure that the documentation was done and etc. But a lot of it was digitized.
Amazing.
Which it's time saving and cost saving as well.
Now, I'm conscious that you've got to jump on at 2 o'clock here. So what we can do is, do you want me to stop the recording? And then we can always catch up early next week, just go through the last one and then tie everything together, if that's okay.
Yeah, that works for me, if that's okay. I mean, the phone's not rang yet. It's up to you whether you want to.
Well, I didn't want to, you know, get you to miss your call or anything. So if you do need to go, let me know, and we can always pick up again next week.
Yeah, let's keep going. If it's I don't know.
Yeah, no, carry on, of course, because I think there's some really good things there, and it all does tie into those 4 fundamentals, doesn't it? And then I suppose the last thing was, you've had a big career in, you know, the telecoms kind of ISP, MSP environments, which then opens you up to, you know, every industry under the sun, really, because it's come through. Right, no worries. Let me stop recording. There we go. Of a few of the questions that we ran through, and then finish off by really talking about what it is that you're looking for with your next challenge.
Okay, cool.
So I suppose what I'd like to know then, if you had a new team, or you were coming onto a new project, communication where it isn't where you would like it to be, what are the top 5 things that you would implement or do in order just to get that communication channels flowing and get the team communicating properly?
Okay, so for me, it's leading by example. You know, treat people how you'd expect to be treated is definitely key, but also listening is key. So taking the time to listen to the team, to the customer, to your stakeholders, to understand their pain points, understand what they think's working and is not working, and then look at how we can enhance what is working, but also look at where the risks are and the areas that are in pain, almost the pain points, and figure out how we can work better at communicating. In terms of teams, it's definitely listening and getting them to feel that they can talk as well, because my experience of going into teams is that they don't necessarily want to talk to you straight away. So it's building that relationship. It's all about you communicating effectively to them and building that relationship and building that trust for me. And that's the same with the customer as well. When I've been going into customers, when I've worked for MSPs, it's building that trust, getting to know how they work, and it's adapting your style. And it goes back to adaptability and flexibility, but it's adapting your style in terms of how you approach things and how you deal with people as well.
And I think you also mentioned about was it Kanban, bringing in like a Kanban board that all sorts of different people could access. Yeah. And is there any particular systems or pieces of software or anything that you would utilize to make that easier, just to help, you know, grease the wheels, as it were?
I think from a communication perspective, for me, and we did this very much at City Fibre, our communication strategy, I had somebody in my team was supported with the comms, and we had to adapt our communication strategy according to the build partner, according to the teams that we're delivering into. And it's the same on any project that you deliver, and with your team, I suppose. It's finding what works for you. So there's no specific software for comms for me, but in terms of what we looked at things like newsletters would work for some people, emails would work for some people, or podcasts, they'd work for other people. Other people wanted face-to-face communications. It's all about what you're delivering, how you're working with your team at that point, I think, to understand what would work best. And the only way you're going to understand that is getting to know people and communicating yourself. And really, it's getting under the bonnet of it, I suppose, isn't it? And understanding what makes people tick.
Yeah, definitely. I think especially when you're new to a team, you want to get as much face time with them as possible, don't you? So then
100%,
you understand. Although if you're dealing with maybe engineers, programmers, they might not want that. They might want,
that comes
digital
through
communication.
adaptable, doesn't it? Adapting your style, and it's the
Yeah.
same with customers. So engineers are there's different types of engineers. There's and if you've worked with technical teams, you know that there's network engineers, there's architects, etc. They're all very different, and it's understanding how to approach that. Some of them are very vocalized and would welcome a chat. Others just want to get their head down and program and just don't speak to me, don't look at me. So it's finding a communication channel that you can open up and way to deal with them and get the best out of them as well.
Brilliant. And then the same sort of thing with collaboration then. So, you've come onto a project, perhaps it's behind or it's not on, like hitting the milestones. You've noticed that the team probably isn't gelling as it needed to, isn't collaborating. Maybe people aren't being as flexible. What would the top 5 things be that you would do in order to improve collaboration and flexibility?
So for me, again, it's that communication, but also looking at, so if you open that communication line, you invite the feedback, that's the first step for me. But it's also then doing a bit of a deeper dive into like what is making, what's causing the failure. It's almost like a root cause analysis as to where the pain points are, why aren't they gelling, why is the in a team, why aren't they gelling, in a project, why is it not progressing, what are the blockers, and how do we overcome them, and how do we get people to collaborate to overcome them. And sometimes, certainly in teams and delivery teams, it might be that the wrong skill sets aligned, the wrong person's aligned to that. And I think I mentioned that previously on one of my examples that I gave, where the account manager wasn't the right person for that, and we certainly weren't collaborating. So it's recognizing when people don't fit, and it's trying to find the right fit. So it's almost like doing that analysis of, that person doesn't fit there, but they'd be better placed over here. And there's nothing wrong with stopping something or making those changes. But it's how you deliver that message as well. So in my last team, I made some changes in terms of who was delivering what initiative. After a period of time, I felt that the right people weren't necessarily delivering the initiatives that they should be, and that their skill set was probably better placed elsewhere. So I made some changes there. Initially, those changes were met with resistance, but as time went on, and working with that person or those people to make them to understand why we made those changes, the collaboration started to develop then. And I would say that it was certainly sort of from a mentoring point of view as well. It supported with that, and it enhanced their career as well, and they've gone on to do better things now. So it is all about understanding, it's all about understanding your people, and that can be your team, it can be people in your project team, and it can be your customer as well.
Yeah, I can definitely see why, if you were working on something and you were pulled onto something else initially, you'd be quite annoyed by it, wouldn't you? Because people don't like change, and but in the long run, hindsight, you might look back and think, actually, I much prefer where I am right now. But I can see why you get the resistance at first.
And it might be that you're in the thick of it and you think, why on earth? But then actually in 3 months' time, you look back and think, look at everything that I've learned. So there are reasons behind that. And I think if you communicate that effectively at the beginning, it really supports with that. And, I've been through it where I've been moved on to things that I haven't necessarily thought was the right move, but actually I've learned quite a lot of things from that. Equally, I've been moved off of things that I think I've been doing a really good job on, to go into something else, and you're like, whoa, why have I been moved off of that? But there's always a reason, isn't there? But as long as it's communicated effectively. But fostering collaboration is definitely finding out what makes people tick in terms of customers, and like even engineering teams, like we mentioned before. It is finding out what makes them tick, understanding how you approach them. It's being adaptable and changing your approach constantly, and working with those people.
Well, that brings us on to adaptability then. And I think you've mentioned several times, you've moved from one project to another project, different environments, how, well, I suppose it ties into the fixer, the nickname, the fixer. But how would you say you can improve adaptability, and what if you were mentoring somebody, what would you say to them that they would need to do in order to improve their adaptability?
I think that embrace the change, embrace being adaptable, understand that there is reason for everything. That one, recognise there's nothing wrong with recognising when something's not working, and thinking of an alternative route, whether that's your career, whether that's delivering a project, whether it's in your team, anything, or as a customer, it's being able to actually recognise. I think that's really key for adaptability. And two, it's understanding that adaptability and change doesn't mean it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. Embrace it, and look at the good that can come from that, because there's always goodness that can come from change, isn't there? You can always learn something, and that's what I try to do with anything in my life. Look, at the moment, I'm I haven't got a role currently, a permanent role, so I'm adapting to life at that. And it's a case of trying to keep positive constantly, and it's not that easy given the market at the moment, but it's trying to understand what you can learn from this. And I'm sure in 3 months' time I'm going to look back, maybe 2 months' time, when I've got a role, let's be positive, that there's something I can learn from this. I've met you, we've had this conversation, I've met a few people along the way that I've had conversations with, and I've learned things. I've done video interviews that I'd never done before, so that's a learning curve for me. I know what I'd definitely not do again. I know what I will. So it's all about learning and constantly thinking outside the box, and just using every opportunity to change and find a new way of working. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I don't think that makes sense.
Push yourself out of your comfort zone, I imagine.
Push yourself out of the comfort zone. But it's been open-minded, and it's not been insular and closed off. And in terms of the amount of times that in my career that I've come across delivering projects, or even with teams, is, well, this is how we've always done it. Yeah, but that might be working.
And I'm sure you mentioned it earlier, not being afraid to fail, giving it a go.
Yeah, definitely not being afraid to fail, because we learn from failure, don't we?
Yeah, well, you take way more away from it.
Yeah, people don't like it, you get egg on your face, but there's always learning to be had from any situation, I think. And I think that's why I'm quite in the area that I work in, I've been successful, is I'm quite happy. One of the things I always say, and I learned this a long time ago when I worked at Daisy, is own your shizzle. And basically that, I stand by that. If you own up to anything, if you do something, own it. So whether you've done something wrong, don't try and hide it, just own it, because people respect you more for that. But own it as well, in terms of own it and go, right, so what can I learn from this? So there's twofold to that, but that's what I say to my team all the time, is own your shizzle, because nobody's going to respect you if you don't. And there's nothing worse than finding out somebody's been disingenuous about what they've done, and try to hide it, but you get found out in the end. So own your shizzle, understand what's gone wrong, and look at how we can adapt.
Yeah, I think this came up on the last call that I did, and they were talking about the sooner that you find out something's gone wrong, and actually it comes up on nearly every call, but as sooner that the team can find out, the sooner you can put things in place in order to fix it. Whereas, if you do hide it, as you say, it's going to come out in the wash eventually, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've been in situations where I've seen people literally try and cover their own butts, basically, because they're scared of the alternative. And actually, that alternative is not as scary as you think, because if you own it and you own up to it, or you say, right, this is what's happened, but this is how I think I'm going to fix it. How does that make you look so much better than trying to hide something that's not necessarily going right? And I've seen it in projects as well, where people have sort of been disingenuous about how the project's tracking, and then you get down 3 months down the line, and you suddenly find out that actually it's not as it looks on paper, and it's like X amount of money over budget, over days. The customer's not particularly very happy, but on paper it's always looked very good.
Yeah,
because somebody doesn't want to acknowledge that it's not been working or ask for help. And I think there's nothing wrong with being able to. There's something really powerful about being able to say, this isn't working, I need some support, or I think I need to deliver this a different way. And I think if you're adaptable, you would do that.
And people in general like to help other people, don't they? So if you can say, you know, can I get some help on this, makes them a bit more humble. So no, I really like that.
I think it comes with maturity, absolutely, because I recognise probably when I was a lot younger, I probably wouldn't have been able to put my hand up and go, do you know what, I've done that wrong. I think it definitely comes with maturity, and it's something I try to teach my children as well. I've got teenage children, and I'm very much about owning our shizzle in this house. We own our shizzle. And, you know, my daughter's, she's a teenage girl, and there's a lot of adaptability needed in a teenage girl.
I've got two. We're not teenagers yet, but I
Mate,
don't know how I'm
I'm
going to deal
now.
with it.
I've only got one girl, it's a nightmare. No, she's not. She is, but you know, teenage girls are teenage girls, and there are situations that they get themselves into. And we had a real clear conversation about probably 3 months ago where there was a situation and I didn't agree with what she'd done. And I said, you need to own it. You just need to own it. You need to say, I've been wrong in this point, but it doesn't warrant the other behaviour. But you own your shizzle. And that's what I was really clear to her about. And to be fair, she did do that. And I think it diffused the situation quicker than if she'd have tried to not own it.
Yeah. And it's a life lesson, isn't it?
Huge life lesson, but yeah, I stand by that.
So what's your vision then? Obviously, you've got such a varied background, you know, telecoms, ISP, MSP, major projects, multi-million-pound FTSE 100s. You know, you've got a huge amount of experience that you can bring. So what is it you're looking for in your next challenge?
I think for me, it's about the role. I've really enjoyed my role at City Fibre in terms of heading up the delivery team, bringing the high-performing team together and delivering the initiatives that provided change. But equally, I miss the customer-facing side of things as well. So for the MSPs, I've worked with a number of different customers. For me, it's about, I am looking for a head of role. I enjoy going in and looking at where I can make a change and make a difference. So that's where I want to go. I want to go into, I'd like to go back into a role where we deliver customer facing projects, but in saying that, I have no problem with having a conversation about an internal role as well. It is really down to the role, and I really quite like the idea of making the role my own. So whether that's coming into a new role where it's, you know, new founded and it's something that they've not had before, or where somebody's moving on, but then moving in and looking at where I can improve and enhance that existing role. Ultimately, the next step is I see director. That's where I ultimately wanted to go. I had a 5-year plan. COVID and obviously redundancy has put paid to that. So we're extending it slightly. I'm set, you know, 2-3 years, but that's ultimately the next step for me is going to be director. But for now, it's focusing about finding that role that's going to put me on that journey. Where bring my skill set as well, because I've got, like you said, broad brush. I've got a huge amount of experience of working with MSPs, working with very varied sector customers as well, private and public sector, but very different industries. So I've got a huge amount of experience. I'm really adaptable, and I think that I can bring a real good approach to any business, really.
Fantastic. And is there any particular sector, or, I mean, again, because of the ISP, MSP side, the amount of sectors you've worked with, would you want to stay within the service provider, professional services kind of sector?
Not really.
Or going straight?
No, I've not got a preference on sector. I think I've got a lot of public sector experience, but equally, I quite enjoy the private sector. Finance and insurance seems to be boosted right now. That seems to be the industry that is about a lot, and a lot of the jobs are focused on that. But you know, I've not got a problem. There's a lot of utilities out there as well, and I've got the fibre experience.
Excellent.
It's more about the role really than the actual industry. I think we spoke about this, and I can't remember whether we spoke about it earlier or whether it was just a conversation you and I had with the transferable skills. I don't think that we should be pigeonholed into industry. I think there's, this understanding industry, but in the roles, so the head of project management, head of change and transformation, it's more about those softer skills and bringing those softer skills in a transferable. Obviously, you need to understand your industry, but there's nothing that a research can't do. And a lot of those transferable skills are the softer skills that you've got that you can bring across and support with. So I think from an industry perspective, that's something that can be learned fairly quickly. Whereas the old skill set that you bring into the party, those softer skills, they're developed in time. And I think if industries and recruiters understood that a little bit more, they'd have a little bit more of a probably wider selection of people, although they've got a lot at the moment. But what I think I'm trying to say is that, we shouldn't be trying to be industry specific. We should be looking at that person and the broader picture rather than pigeonholing them into industry specification.
Yeah, I mean, from a recruitment standpoint, you'll always get a client saying, we need somebody with this industry. Especially if you're either trying to recruit directly, say, into the NHS, they always like people with NHS experience, public sector experience. But then if you try to take someone from the public sector and put them into like an MSP, for instance, then there's a lot of pushback there as well. So I get it that people have, skills across the board. They have transferable skills, communication. I mean, I always say attitude beats skill.
Yeah.
If someone's got the willingness to get up and do it, they can apply themselves to anything.
I agree with that.
It's kind of frustrating that within a job spec, they'll say 5 years of this particular industry. So yeah, I do feel your pain there. And then I guess it also depends on the sector, doesn't it? Because you seem to find, depending on the level of the role, if it's quite a junior role, the sector might be less important. But I would say mid to, director level, they probably want that exact sector. And then when you get to like the C-suite, it can be a bit more flexible again. You can come from different industries. It's just really strange how it all fits together, isn't it?
I think for me, where I'm coming from, I've obviously worked for a number of MSPs. I think I've lost count how many MSPs that I've worked for, and I've worked simultaneously with varied clients. So, I've worked big programs simultaneously for global clients, so in America and Brazil, at the same time working with public sector and local councils, but then a finance insurance broker. So I've straddled across all three of those as I've delivered and adapted it to that. So I suppose working for an MSP, you have to get into the head and the understanding of that industry quite quickly. And I think that's where I'm moving. So from my perspective, I guess I feel that I can adapt and be flexible. See what I did there? In that industry, and it's trying to get that across. And it's not easy to get that across, especially if you can't have that conversation with somebody in the recruitment process. It's really hard to get it across on your CV. And it's trying to have that conversation and say, I get that you want industry experience, but this is my experience and I can bring this to it. And I think there's a lot of people that work for MSPs that can do that, but it's not necessarily recognised.
Yeah, I think it's probably because from an MSP side of things, I always find if I got a candidate and I want to place them in whatever industry, if they've come from an MSP background, it's fairly easy to place them because they do have that adaptability. It's just getting people into it in the first place sometimes that can be tricky. One last question I always like to ask people is, how do you maintain your kind of peak performance? So do you have any routines or, things that you would do if you noticed that you were off kilter a little bit, to get yourself back reinvigorated and firing on all cylinders?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I try to keep positive where I can. I'm actually generally quite a positive person. but there's times when you're not, isn't there? And you know, you think you're not working well. So I try to talk it through with whoever, whether I've had a mentor for the last few years, which has been great support. So I'm very big on talking things through and just thrashing things out and just trying to get a different perspective on a situation or something. I'd like to say meditation, but you know, finding the time for that. No, but generally, you know, the meditation route works, but it's just trying to think about that bigger picture and trying to, like I said before, think about change and adaptability and thinking this, you know, nothing's ever what it seems, and trying to look at trying to take positives from each situation. And sometimes it's hard, I'm not going to lie. You know, this current situation we find ourselves in, it's hard on days, you know, a lot of the rejections can get to you, but you know, you just need one positive conversation that can bring you back out of that funk of almost.
Yeah, definitely. It's strange, isn't it, how one little positive interaction with somebody can completely change the trajectory of the day.
Yeah.
But no, that's lovely. Well,
sorry, one thing I was going to add is walk away as well. So just sometimes if you're in the weeds, you just almost need to take a step back, walk away, go and do something, even if it's make a cup of tea or go for a walk, but literally take yourself out of it for an hour, 2 hours. And when you come back, it's never as bad as it looks.
No, you don't have the knee-jerk reaction, do you?
Yeah. Bigger picture, always the bigger picture.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been great to have you on.
Thank you.
And what I'll do is I'll just end record right here.